Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is your no-nonsense guide to Modern Warfare 3's Zombies mode, covering everything from the very basics of how Modern Warfare 3 Zombies works and how it works differently to previous versions of Zombies, all the way through to some unique named weapons that you can find in the mode and other hidden secrets. The video is split into chapters in the video description if you want to click around to the stuff that's relevant to you, but for now, let's talk about how the game mode actually works. You'll start off deploying with one of the weapons that the game gives you to begin with, and you'll notice straight away when you spawn in that there are multiple tiers of the world around you. You start in tier 1, which is a low threat zone. There's a medium threat zone and a tier 3 high threat zone. In tier 1, zombies die super easily. It's chill, it's not a big deal. In tier 2, you get the occasional super sprinter, which will chase you down faster than you can run, and the zombies are a little bit more beefy. And in tier 3, they're all super sprinting and they're very, very strong. I would recommend in your first couple of matches, you completely avoid the tier 3 threat zone because there's really no good reason to push into that area without having a specific objective in mind. Now, the flow of each game is that you'll explore and do contracts in the map, which you can find via the minimap, and you'll notice that as you do so, a timer is counting down on the left-hand side of your screen. At any time during your match, you can go to an exfil point marked with this symbol on your map, and you can exfil with everything that you're currently holding. You'll have some of that stuff saved for your next game. More on that later. However, if the timer runs out and all 45 minutes tick down, the hazard symbol zone on the map will start expanding, almost like it did in DMZ if you're familiar, and you'll have a chance to get to one last exfil zone, after which you will not be able to survive and you'll lose the progress that you've made on that character. So why am I talking about like saving progress between matches and how does that work? Well, the whole point of exfilling is that you'll keep the weapons that you're holding and you'll also keep any acquisitions that you have not used in that match. So let's say you're running around and you find a Juggernog can, or maybe you find an ether wrench or some other kind of upgrade acquisition, right? You can choose to use that in that game and apply it to your weapon, so you get that pack-a-punch or you get that perk active, or you can choose to basically stow it in your rucksack. And if you do that and then you exfil, it will go into your acquisitions stash in the menus and you'll be able to choose which next match you use it in because you select your loadout based on the acquisitions in your stash every single time you deploy. This means if you find 3 Juggernog cans in one game and you stow them all, then in your acquisition stash afterwards, assuming you exfilled successfully, you'll be able to bring one in with you for the next match and then another in with you for the match after that, etc. And if you don't even use them in those following games, you'll still have them in your stash afterwards for you to use in other matches. It's all about whether or not you use them. If you use it in that match, it's gone. If you don't use it in that match, you can use it next time. Now, I know there are a lot of questions surrounding what other attributes of your character you keep as you play. And something that is different to previous iterations of Zombies is that between different deployments, you do not keep the pack-a-punch level or the rarity level of your weapon, even if you exfil with it. So if I'm using an M4 and I pap it twice and I get its rarity up and then I exfil and then I deploy with the same M4 next game, it's going to be back to the base level rarity and it's going to be back to unpack-a-punched. So keep this in mind. For example, the points that you earn in a given match, you might as well spend them all before you finish because you're not carrying those over to a further deployment. They're all staying in that first deployment that you earned them in. Now, there are also ways that you can craft certain things to use in your matches, and that is the schematics system. Schematics can be found in the world from doing various events, and we'll talk about that later a little bit in more detail. But when you get a schematic and you successfully exfil with it, it means that you can then consistently craft whatever item you've extracted with. And when you do that, the schematic will go on a cooldown timer and you'll have to wait a little bit before you're able to recraft it, but you'll have it for that next deployment because it will just go into your acquisition stash. And this is relevant when we talk about how you get perks in the game because there are a few ways to get perks. One way is to get the schematic for a perk and then craft the perk, spawn in with it, and just drink it as soon as you spawn. Another way is to run around the world and complete activities that will reward you with a perk can in a safe or from a chest or things like that. And another way is to just go to the perk machine itself, marked on the map, and to buy it. So there are a handful of ways that you can do that, and there's also a Wonder Fizz machine in the map which has access to all of the perks, so you have a centralized location where you can buy them all from. The Pack-a-Punch works in a similar way, except unlike previous Call of Duty games, different Pack-a-Punch machines have different effects in this one, or rather, some just don't have the effects that others do. And the reason for that is that if you go to a Pack-a-Punch machine, and there are multiple on the map, but if you go to one in the tier 1 zone, you're only going to be able to get the first Pack-a-Punch level. You're going to have to go to a higher threat zone to get the corresponding higher level Pack-a-Punch. And the price of those is 5k, 10k, and 50 15k respectively. Pack-a-punching increases the damage that your gun will do and also often has a variety of effects that are specific to the weapon. So for example, sometimes pack-a-punching a shotgun will mean that you reload 2 shells at once. Other times it'll mean that like maybe you have like an LMG, for example, it will have a crazy large number of bullets in the magazine. Like we're talking like 600 before you have to reload instead of the usual 60, let's say. And overall, as a good rule of thumb, it's a good idea to try and have pack level 1 if you're going into tier 2, pack level 2 if you're going into tier 3, etc. But you also can't forget about weapon rarities. So we'll talk about that next. The weapon rarity system is similar to previous Call of Duty games in that you start with a base level rarity and then the rarities increase in power, going from green to blue to purple to a kind of orangey color. And then there's also a unique yellow tier for wonder weapons, but that's kind of a class of its own. Weapon rarities can be boosted by grabbing an ether wrench, and you'll find a green ether wrench, for example, which will boost your weapon to green rarity. Blue wrenches boost the blue rarity, etc. And it tells you each time you upgrade a weapon's rarity what the damage multiplier is going to be. And that's what it's going to do. It's going to give you a higher damage multiplier on that weapon when it's at that new rarity. So this means that you don't necessarily have to have the money to pack a punch. You might just need to have the equipment in order to boost your weapon rarity to get a real power boost. And it alternatively also means that you could, for example, say, well, I don't have enough to pap, but I do have enough to spin the box, and the box could give me a high rarity weapon here. So I'm going to take my chances there instead in order to get the power boost that you need in order to proceed with your game. There's also another type of reward that you can get called Ethereum crystals, and those automatically upgrade your weapon's pack-a-punch level when you use them. So the ether tool upgrades the rarity and the Ethereum crystal upgrades the pack-a-punch level. Now, another way to get pack-a-punch tiers and ether tools and ammo mods as well to make your weapon do elemental damage and all sorts of other stuff like that is to complete the contracts on the map, like I said. So if you look at your minimap, you'll see that there are all of these possible icons and some of them are marked as contracts. Different contracts have different processes involved with them and different rewards. And I'm going to run through a couple of different contracts for you now, just so you understand how they work, what the kind of flow is like, and how best to take them down. Let's get through these nice and fast. First off, we've got the ACV escort. This one is really simple. It's just an escort mission. You just got to get it from point A to point B with stuff attacking you as you go. And it works pretty similarly, actually, to the deliver cargo mission, except in deliver cargo, you're going to also probably be chased by a helicopter at one point and you'll be driving. You've got the defend the ground station objectives, which is essentially just like a holdout that you've got to do, except you're really the focus of a lot of that sort of attacking fire, so just be very wary of that. You've got your raid the weapon stash contracts, and in those you basically got to go and use a drill on a safe, and some time will tick down and zombies will attack you and stuff, but then eventually it will be completed and you'll get your reward from inside the safe. There are bounties that you can do too for high value targets. These are often either a mimic or a mangler, and they'll be a little bit more beefed up compared to the usual mimics and manglers that you'd be dealing with. And they can actually be disciples too, for the record, now that I think about it. You've got the ether extractors one, which I personally hate. I would stay away from this. It's a little rocket logo. These rockets spawn in. You got to go over to them and hack them, and it's a pain in the butt, dude. And the mercs are shooting you, and it's just like, ugh, give me a break. So I don't like this one very much, as you can tell. You've also got infected strongholds, where you go in, you shoot a bunch of the spores that you can find, like dotted around the walls and things like that. And once you've cleared absolutely all of the spores from the infected stronghold, you'll then be able to walk through it without having a gas mask. But if you haven't cleared the spores, like, you'll slowly be ticking down your health unless you've got a gas mask, because there's gas permeating the entire building. And these can be really, really good for rewards. And you get these special Ethereum crates at the end as well. And they're only unlocked once you've cleared the stronghold, and they tend to have some really powerful goodies in them. So I really like doing these. And you've also got this one with these alien pods, and this one's actually pretty straightforward usually. You've just got to basically pick up this equipment and throw it at all of these eggs, wait like 5 seconds, and then shoot the eggs after they've been affected by that special equipment. And just do that like 5 or 6 times, and they're marked on the map with a little blue circle, so it's really, really straightforward. Next up, we should probably talk about bosses, because while you're doing contracts, you're probably going to run into some crazy bosses around the world. There's the Mega Abomination now, which is like a 3-legged chicken with 3 heads. It's really weird, but this thing is very, very tanky. And I'd recommend that you just avoid this thing, honestly, if you find it out in the world, because the rewards that you get, especially in the stages that you're probably in your game, are just not worth the absolute mammoth amount of effort it takes to destroy it. Now, granted, if you've got like super pack-a-punch weapons and you're feeling really strong, then sure, go for it. It can be a fun activity to do, but don't do it expecting that you're going to get infinite wonder waffles or something just from taking that one boss down. Now, there are a few other boss zombie types. There's disciples, and disciples are going to charge up other zombies around them as well as kind of zapping you, so be careful of those. You've got manglers, manglers, and they've got a cannon on their arm, which is weak to fire damage especially. So if you've got fire damage weapon or Molotovs or things like that, or explosive damage, that's really powerful against manglers, and really be sure to shoot at their cannon arm for maximum damage output. And roaming around the map, you also have various military convoys, which are AI that are going to shoot you and require you to take a bunch of cover and oftentimes just hide from them while your health regens so you can take them down one by one. The military guys don't tend to be very, very strong. It's just that they will chip your health down very fast. So just be extra careful about how much cover you have when you're fighting against them, and be conscious of how out in the open you are at all times. Now, we'll come back to boss stuff in a moment. I want to quickly just touch on ways that you can get schematics, because I alluded to that earlier. Essentially, you can find these out in the world. There are just various ways that you can randomly stumble across them, but there are also ways that you can guarantee them to spawn in, and that's via the story missions available to you in the game's menus. These story missions start off very simple. You just got to spawn in, ping a contract on your map, go do the contract, exfil, stuff like that. But eventually it gets a lot more complicated, like taking down resupply choppers and using sentry guns to get merc kills and all sorts of stuff. There are a handful of other contracts in the game too. They're all pretty self-explanatory, and they all begin pretty much the same way. You locate them on your map, you run over to them, you hold square, and then you follow the instructions that they give you. The missions don't just get you the schematics though, they also unlock cutscenes for you if you get to the end of a given act. So you start off on Act 1, Tier 1, and then you get to Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, etc. And when you get through all of those tiers in Act 1, you get a cutscene, and then you do the same thing for Act 2 and Act 3. And through that process, you're going to see that, for example, the recipe for Stamina Up, which is so useful, by the way, in this game. Stamina Up is a really powerful perk. That is going to come from the escort mission that you're going to be doing at that kind of point in the story missions. Similarly, a little later in the story missions, you've got one which is going to guarantee you an ether tool schematic as well. And that's really useful because that means you can regularly spawn in with a weapon that's not just at base rarity, but is actually at that next rarity up, that green rarity. And so you're going to start with a big power advantage compared to where you'd normally be at. Now then, coming back to the bosses, there are specific named enemies in the world that you can take down and get special rewards from them. So for example, here's a clip of me taking down a named enemy called the Knight. The Knight was kind of parading around the map in a convoy, and so we chased him down, and I mortared the hell out of him, blew him to smithereens, and grabbed all the goodies. This is actually related to a wider quest that you can do within the map, and if you'd like a guide on that, it's linked on the screen right now and in the description down below. Another named enemy in the map that you can get a unique named weapon from is Legacy, and the path to getting to Legacy is a little chain of events. You're going to want to start off taking down a merc encampment or a mercenary encampment, and that's going to get you a key card that you can use to open up one of the mercenary strongholds. Now, if you want to shortcut this part of the process, you can actually buy those key cards from the buy stations around the map sometimes. If it doesn't spawn in one, just go to another one and you should be able to buy one for about $2,000. Once you've got a key card, go to one of the mercenary strongholds, not an infected stronghold, it has to be a mercenary one, and take out all the enemies in there, complete the stronghold, and you should find that at the end, you are rewarded from a drop or one of your rewards boxes with a Legacy Fortress keycard. And so you need to look on your map for the Legacy Fortress and then make sure that you've got yourself some Pack-a-Punch and stuff like that, because this one's a bit more tricky. Make your way to the Legacy Fortress, fight your way through it, being aware of the fact that there are lots of pop-up dummies that are going to decoy you, and there are also lots of riot shield dudes, so it's a good idea to go in here with Semtex. And once you've fought through that entire thing, you'll be able to fight Legacy. He's a named character, he's a little mini-boss, and once you take Legacy down, he will drop a named unique weapon for you to grab, and it's basically a dragon's breath. And it's basically pretty damn kick-ass as well. So this is definitely a fun one to roll through with the boys and try and do for yourselves. Now, through all of this, you might find that getting around the map has taken a little while. There are a bunch of vehicles that you can find, and these vehicles can be repaired at the gas stations, and that will give them more fuel. Just drive the vehicle up to the gas station, sit outside, you'll hear a little ding, and that'll tell you that the vehicle is being repaired. You can also individually repair the tires on a vehicle if a tire pops and it's meaning that your steering is a bit funny, by hopping out and going and holding square on the tire in question. Further to the vehicles, you also have redeploy drones, which you can use to get boosted way high into the air, and then you can fly to wherever you want to go. And there are also little purple ether rifts around the map, which you can use for the same purpose. Now, I know you're waiting for this one. We got to talk wonder weapons. There are 3 main wonder weapons available in the game at launch. There is the ray gun, the classic fan favorite, the Wunderwaffe, which zaps zombies and chains lightning between them, clearing out entire hordes at once, and the pride and joy joy of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, the brand new wonder weapon. This plasma-filled beauty has multiple purposes. You can use it to attack, as you're seeing I'm doing here, or you can actually use it to help you with traversal. So I mentioned just now that you can use those ether rifts to get around a bit more easily, or you can use vehicles, etc. But you can also use this gun for it to give you a little helping hand. Now, assuming you've run a couple games, you've got yourself some wonder weapons, you've taken down some named enemies, you're probably wanting to graduate onto some more expert stuff, and a lot of that is covered in the other videos that I post on my YouTube channel. So linked on screen right now are a few such videos that I think you might be interested in, such as taking down the massive worm boss and some extra hidden Easter eggs and side quests as well. If the video has been useful, please drop a like before you go, and I'll see you in some of those next videos.